Catherine of Aragon died on the 7th of January 1536 in a cold room at Kimbolton Castle, and she died still signing herself the Queen. They had taken the title years before and ordered her to answer to a smaller name, Princess Dowager, the widow of Henry's dead brother. She refused it to the last day of her life. They kept her from her daughter Mary. They moved her from one damp, isolated house to another, and she went on insisting, before God and anyone who would listen, that she was Henry's one true wife and always had been. She had done everything her world asked of a queen. She was patient. She was obedient. She was faithful for 27 years, through a divorce she never accepted and a church torn in half around her. And it cost her the crown, her daughter, and in the end, her life. Everything you have just heard is what happened. Here is what might have been, if Catherine of Aragon had fought back. What follows is the prologue of my novel, Divorced, Not Dead this time, read from the audiobook. The audiobook is available directly at victoriahawkinsbooks.com, and the paperback and Kindle editions are linked on the same page. Then let us begin. Kimbolton Castle, January 1536. The Prologue. Kimbolton Castle, January 1536. The first time. She had done everything right, and it was killing her. That was the thought Catherine could not get past, lying in the cold, bad room at Kimbolton. That was the last in a long descent of cold, bad rooms, each meaner than the last, the slow geography of a wronged queen's punishment. She had been moved, and moved again, further from London, further from her daughter, into damp and draughts and the company of jailers who called themselves servants. And through all of it, she had done everything right. She had honoured God. She had defended her marriage as the sacrament it was. She had refused every bribe and threat to call herself Princess Dowager, refused to lie, refused to bend, because the truth was the truth, and God saw it even when no one else would say it. She had been patient. She had submitted to everything but the one lie, and waited for God to set it right, exactly as she had been taught a faithful woman must. And here was where it had brought her. A freezing room, a failing body, a daughter she had not been allowed to see in years, a church torn out of England by the roots, a usurping girl crowned in her place, and now this fire in her belly that no physician could name, this thing that had come on so suddenly after the dish of Welsh ale, this agony that doubled her over and would not stop. Maria was there. Dear Maria, who had defied the king's own order and ridden through the winter and forced her way past the guards to be at her side, weeping, holding her hands. That was a mercy. Catherine fixed on it, on the warm grip of the one friend who had crossed a sea and a lifetime for her, because it was easier than fixing on the other knowledge, the cold, certain knowledge that had been growing in her these last days alongside the fire. This was not God's doing. This was Henry's. She knew it the way she had always known things, by reading what others wished her not to read. The suddenness. The dish, sent up special. The way the man who brought it would not meet her eyes. Somewhere in London, her husband, her gentle, grieving, golden husband, who had once won her favour and won and laid the prize in her lap, breathless, had decided that a living Catherine was an inconvenience he was done tolerating, and had reached out one anointed hand across all those miles and stopped her heart with poison, and would weep when he heard, and would mean the weeping, and would call it God's mercy that her suffering was ended. I did everything right, she thought, as the fire climbed, as Maria's face blurred. I honoured you with my whole life. I was patient. I submitted. I waited for you to set it right. And you let him kill me, and the realm is lost, and my Mary is alone among wolves. It was the closest she had ever come to despair, and she was ashamed of it even dying, and she could not push it away. She had played the only game she knew how to play, the game of righteousness and endurance, and she had lost everything on the board. And she was going out of the world in a cold room with the truth in her mouth, and no one left who could afford to hear it. The priest had been. She had made her confession. She had dictated, with the last of her strength, a letter to Henry. "Mine eyes desire you above all things," she had written, forgiving him, because she would go to God with no hatred in her, even for the hand that held the cup. She believed in mercy. She believed it still, even now, even knowing. But oh, she thought, as the room went dark at its edges, and Maria's weeping came from very far away, oh, if she had it to do again. If God in his mercy would give her even one of these years back, even one, knowing what she knew now, what she had paid to learn. She would not be patient. She would not wait. She would do the thing she had been too faithful to do. She would fight him with everything, not as a wronged wife begging the law, but as Isabella's daughter, who had taken a kingdom in the saddle and feared nothing under heaven. She would find the cracks in him. And there were cracks. She had seen them this last year, the glaze coming over his eyes, the grief curdling behind the king. She would put her whole soul into the breach. She would not die in a cold room having lost. She would. The fire reached her heart. There was a sound like a great door, and a cold beyond cold, and then nothing. Catherine of Aragon, who had done everything right, died among her enemies on the 7th of January, certain in her last breath of the thing the world would spend centuries arguing, that it had been no fever, that a hand she had once loved had reached across all those miles to still her heart, and that she went to her God murdered and forgave it. She would carry no hatred where she was going. And then there was a sound like a great door, again, the same door, opening the other way. And Catherine came up out of the dock, gasping, her hand flying to her breast, to her heart, which beat, whole and strong and beating, under her palm. And she was not cold, and she was not dying, and the room around her was not the mean cell at Kimbolton, but a fine, warm chamber she knew, a chamber at Greenwich she had not seen in 9 years, because 9 years from now it would be taken from her. She sat up. Her hands were not an old dying woman's hands. They were smooth, strong, the hands of a woman of 40 in her power. Through the window came the grey light of a spring she had already lived, of a year. She knew the year. She knew it in her bones before her mind would say the number. A year before the worst of it, before the cold rooms, before the descent, before she had lost. 1527. The very lip of the great matter. The beginning of the long road that ended in poison and a cold cell. She was back. God help her. God be thanked. She was back. At the start of it, the whole of it remembered, every grave, the poison, the long cold descent, the death. All of it carried whole, in a living body, at the beginning of the road. Catherine of Aragon sat in the grey dawn of a morning she had lived once already, with her strong heart slamming under her hand, and tears she did not understand running down her face, and made, before she had risen from the bed, before she had said a single prayer, the first and only vow of her second life. Not this time. This time I will not be patient. This time I will not wait. This time, Lord, if you have truly sent me back, and if it is the devil who sent me, then God forgive me and judge me. This time I will fight him with everything you gave me, and I will not die in a cold room having lost. This time I live. Somewhere in the waking palace, a man who did not yet know he had ever killed her was rising to dress, and rehearsing, perhaps, the gentle alms-giving voice in which he meant, quite soon, to tell his wife that she had never been his wife at all. Catherine wiped her face and breathed, and began, for the second time, and forewarned, to think. That was the prologue. The rest of it, all the way to where she changes everything, is waiting at victoriahawkinsbooks.com. The audiobook comes straight from me. The paperback and the Kindle edition are linked on the same page, and if you want the true history the novel grows out of, it is all here on this channel. Subscribe, and I will keep telling it.